Hi, and welcome to the Expansive Podcast as we are making our way to episode 300, slowly inching our way week by week towards that number. And if you are joining in for the first time, the Expansive Podcast is a podcast all about expanding your perception of what is possible, of how you move through the world, especially as the world keeps changing around us very quickly. I'm always joined on this podcast for the past 280 odd episodes by my co-host, co-partner, co-pilot, John Sane. Where are you today, dude?
I am in Cape Town. I'm about to
Okay,
leave
cool.
to go to Malta, but for the moment, I'm in Cape Town.
I'm never sure when I look at your backgrounds. I'm trying to interpret based on what I'm seeing in the background. And of course, I know Dubai, but we know Dubai for now is on hold.
Yes,
So
that's correct.
this is the new apartment because you moved into an apartment, then into a new apartment. So
Yeah. Yes. Now I'm in a new apartment. Now I've signed a lease for 6 months in Cape Town. Decided that Dubai is unplayable for the next 6 months, and we'll just start living our lives from here. It's a huge privilege to be able to live like this, but also quite disruptive because I've been forced back into a suitcase, and my plan was not to be back in a suitcase. It was planned to be kind of settled in a way. But here we are. We have other plans, and I keep joking with my friends that Cape Town keeps calling me back. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be one thing or another, but I keep getting pulled back to Cape Town. So, but that's exactly it. It's a huge privilege. So I'm excited. I'm excited to be here, and we'll just start traveling from here. So that's the step we're going to take. Unfortunately, all the events in the Middle East have been cancelled, so we really don't have any events there. All of them have moved over into Zoom, and all my friends in Dubai that I've been speaking to are fatigued. There's a serious sort of like I would imagine region fatigue for everybody there that's been going under this sort of turmoil for the last little while. And I don't see any let up for the moment. So
yeah, for sure.
We'll see how it pans out. Yeah.
Given how much
shifting from that, we have a guest in the pod, a recurring guest in the pod today. Ro, this is your second appearance? Third. I think that is the most amount of times that someone has been back on the pod.
It is. He's our most regular pod. It is.
Prize?
What can we give you? There must be a prize. Yes. I mean, you're so comfortable in this position that you were starting to talk before you were introduced. You're like, guys, I'm part of the furniture. What are you talking about? Let's just get going with this conversation.
Well, my ego doesn't like more than 2 minutes of being blocked out of a conversation. So I was like, but actually, what I was going to ask you, John, is given what a clothes horse you are, how many suitcases did you bring back from Dubai?
Rowan, I can't tell you how good that question is. Can I tell you something that I've been complaining about to my friends? All my clothes are in Dubai. Well, I didn't bring any clothes. I only brought like one and a half suitcases. Do you know how much effort I have put in over the last 6 months in buying clothes and tailoring them and creating a new wardrobe for my speaking? And here we are, bro. I got two pair of pants. I got 3 shirts. I got 2 jackets. I got nothing here. So anyway, back to the bare bones. Yeah. Thank you for that very insightful question, Rowan. Very insightful. But also because you're also a fashionista, so you're also into this whole process. So you also understand. You know what's so funny, Rowan? I think we're quite similar in that scenario. And Eric, maybe you as well. But when somebody invites me somewhere, whether it's a braai or a wedding or a party, or I'm going to go talk somewhere, the first thing that comes to my mind, what am I going to wear? First thing, like, what's the setup and how do I need to show up? I don't know why I do that, but I don't know if you're similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through an aesthetic change at the moment because and I'm sure we'll get into this. Sorry, Eric, like we've completely hijacked this.
Go for it.
My look is no longer who I am. So I look at my wardrobe, I look at my car, I look at my house. I'm like, none of this is me anymore. Wow. And so I've got this dissonance around like I want less. I want movability. I want clothes that aren't as showy anymore. I realize that I've probably been dressing for other people, not myself, for most of my life. And I actually want to put on something that just makes me go like, that is you, all good. Who cares what anyone else thinks? So these are small things, but they're big things because I think they are signals of an identity change going on. And I'm looking at these incongruences in my life and I'm like, I don't like that anymore. And that extends to friendships. It extends to clients that I will and won't work with. It's like pervasive, but clothes are not a small part of it. So there you go.
Very interesting.
It's such a pertinent point, and I think Eric and I have been speaking about it on the pod as well. I've been going exactly through the same thing, firing friends, changing things, just like because nothing's resonating like it used to. And I think the word you said, which I think is such an important word, is dissonance. And dissonance is the fact that everything you used to do that give you the results that it used to give you are not giving the same results. And we're finding this dissonance in values and outcomes and goals and intentions. And I think this is, I mean, I don't want to say everybody's going through this, but I imagine a band of people are going through this very clear sort of releasing to move into something new. And the trick here is we don't know what the new is yet. Like it's still murky, we're in that gray phase.
Yeah, it's interesting because have you ever heard dissonant or discordant music?
No.
So it's intentionally composed that the chords clash. So I've got my guitar. You were talking to me about my guitar earlier.
Yeah.
It's sitting right next to me.
Yeah.
When you play a chord that is discordant or dissonant, the entire
Yeah.
body of the guitar shakes because these sound waves are bashing into each other as opposed
That's
to
it.
going in parallel. Whereas you play
That's
a normal chord, and I've always thought that's a very good metaphor for life. Like when you're playing a discordant thing, the whole thing shakes like a car that's wheels are misaligned. And I think, Eric, I don't know how old you are, but John, you're over 50, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
I'm
54.
42.
Eric, you're old. Yeah. So I think we start to look at these sorts of things far more discerningly when we hit 50. And look, 50
I
is a
agree.
number, blah, blah, blah. But for me, it wasn't. It was a big threshold. And I've got so much more discernment in me now than I used to have. And I look at things that don't belong or dissonant or discordant, and I'm like, out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just, I think you guys are probably saying the same thing. We're just less tolerant of that stuff.
Outside of the discernment, so obviously you said earlier, just before we got into the call, that it's about being less performative. So that's obviously part of this transition that you're going through. And I'm wondering whether it is, do you feel like it's coming back to who you are, or do you feel like it's a transition into a new version of who you are? And
No, absolutely the former. It's such a good question. Like, I'm just trying to get back to who I was born as. Like, it's literally that simple. But I gave my first keynote the other day. It's called the Aliveness Advantage. I was trying to get my titles to be as sexy as our friend John's here.
And
So-
Eric. Yeah.
Yours are particularly spicy though, so I use Eric as my model for many things, but for headlines it was yours.
Okay.
And
All right.
and I tell the story of when I was 22 months, my younger sister was born, and on that day I developed a stutter and I started making myself faint multiple times a day by holding my breath. So 22 months, right? Very young. And I can remember that day, and I was telling my parents about it, and they're like, you don't remember that day. And I was like, here's where we parked. Those were the flowers growing in the flower bed. This was the weather that day. This was what the facade to the hospital looked like. And this is where mom's room was in the hospital footprint. And they're like, what? Because I've got a photographic memory, so I remembered that day. And so what happened that day was that I thought I'd lost my mother's love. And she'd gone for someone else,
Oh,
and
God.
from that moment, guys, my entire life path was changed. From being happy little 2-month-old to like, oh my God, I've got to impress people. I've got to shapeshift. I've got to be all things to all people. And that's how it's been for 5 decades. And so I've just got to a point where I was like, I'm not carrying that anymore. Like I've been going through this process called the journey of soul initiation. by Bill Plotkin. It's not just a book, it's a field guide. So you go through preparation, dissolution, descent, metamorphosis. It is full on. And Eric, I'm just going back to the loving little dude that I was at 21 months before the rug was pulled out from under me.
Rowan,
And
was that your first memory?
yes, my first memory. And you're only meant
That's
to
your
get your
first
first
memory.
memory at 42 months. So I was 20 months ahead of the game.
But also the thing is, the memory was such a deep emotional hit into the gut. That's why it's become so concrefied. It was so
Yeah.
deeply felt by you. It was a
Mm,
real, almost like an abandonment of sorts. Eh?
Oh yeah, it was a complete abandonment. But the thing is, like, this isn't a woe is me story. This is like, sweet, I know exactly what my origin story is, and so I know how to go and heal it. And like, it's taken me a while to get to real healing. I think I've been dancing around it in a slightly self-performative way. But now I'm like, I probably only have 25 to 35 years of like solid, vital life yet left, and I'm not going to live it being performative and thin. I'm just not going to be shallow like that. And the
I
reason
was,
I mentioned the story is that everyone's got one of these. Like when you do the Enneagram
everyone.
comes from somewhere. There is a moment. And flippin' hell, it is so useful to know that moment, because then you can just put it in its little appropriate size box. You don't have to let it be this major life event. Anyway.
I, I was working with a guy. I'm coaching this, like, he's hyper successful in his life, and he keeps rushing from one thing to the next, and like
You
everything
mean
for him is
financially
just,
is hyper successful?
yeah, financially. So he grew up son of a domestic worker. Was told his entire life, you're not going to amount to much. Like, what are you going to do with your life? Use that as the fuel for breaking into business, like having a intense psychotic hustle, building something really successful. While we are talking, he's like, my 9/11 is being delivered now, but his entire persona is, what's next? What's next? He's like, okay, I see this guy is doing well. I can go into that and I can beat him in doing this. And then he's like, okay, but if I do that, then what's next? And he's like, I don't ever feel enjoyment from what I do. I just do it because I know I can do it and I can beat this person. And I was like, dude, do you realize, like, your entire thing is just proving yourself? That's all you are trying to do. And like, you've proved yourself actually a long time ago, but you keep wanting to prove yourself to yourself. Like, you are not enough if you aren't making more, doing more, beating the next person. And it was like, it's this wound that he's just never slowed down to celebrate. I said to him, like, tonight I actually want you to go and write a letter to that young version of you and tell him what you've done and what you've accomplished and who you've become as a man. And then I want you to go and pop that bottle of champagne and celebrate that part of your life is over and that you are now moving into something new. And I think that's something that I wish we had that language more often in our lives, that we have to understand rituals and transitions much better. I think it would serve people in general, whether in your personal life or in business, so deeply if we understood that we are always going through these different transitions, and that we can mark them and celebrate them and make those transitions more effective if we just knew, like, what it actually looked like, how we go through this. And so, Rowan, I'm actually wondering, 'cause for you, that's part of the transition, right?
At all. People don't even know what transitions are.
Yeah, but so this is part of your transition now. It's like you are starting to think, well, I'm changing, like I'm experiencing this inner change, but I'm also wanting to change the things around me that are symbols of who I am. Right? That's
Yeah,
part of your transition as well for you.
yeah. Although I think, Eric, the word change, I don't know about change. Like, it's more along the line, because change is quite efforty. I'm more along the lines of, like, just let it come. Like, it's been there all along. Just like, it's more unpeeling than acquiring. And I think that's a really important lesson for some people who may be listening to this, who are like really into finding their best form of themselves, it doesn't always have to be efforting. Sometimes it does. But actually, the place I'm in, I'm just like, stop the game. Like, it's okay. I've done enough. I am enough. Just ride the wave that I'm on. It's a good wave. And I've been on this good wave for a long time, but something in me just wouldn't let myself see it and live into it. So I was coaching this very, very smart young woman the other day, very, very clever. And she said something that was so interesting to me. She said, I'm just not hustling anymore. And I've been looking for this word to describe like my mode for so long. And like sometimes I use the word forcing or pressing, and then when she used hustling, I was like, oh my God, that's it. I've been hustling and I do not want to hustle anymore because I think hustling gets in the way of the natural flow of what's trying to happen to us or come to us. It's so efforty that you just don't see the wood for the trees. And so change for me is a little bit in that category, Eric. Like I'm not trying to change. I'm just trying to like let go.
So many points I want to bring up. I mean, there's so many things that you guys have spoken about. First thing I want to say is identity. And Rowan, you spoke about identity. And I think the big term that most people aren't realizing is that they have to shift their identities. This new world requires you to be at an authentic level of identity, meaning you need to strip away everything that's not stopping you from evolving into this new type of identity, or stripping away parts of you to form the identity you've always had. And my new book that I just finished is all about, and one of the payoff lines I was playing with is the future is not about a better strategy. It's about a new identity. And it's aimed directly at sort of corporates, because corporates are very much into the planning and strategizing. But actually, the truth is the leaders all carry an identity with wounds in them. And those wounds play out inside that sort of the game of the corporate. And so for me, this word identity keeps popping up. And I love it because ultimately what we are all doing here is alchemizing identity. And in that identity, the projection changes. So that's the first thing I wanted to say around that. The second thing I wanted to say is there's a great TikTok account. And there's this guy that is not very happy with his life. And I imagine he's 30s or 40s. And he then creates this character of himself at 12 years old that comes to visit him. And so he plays these two roles. And the 12-year-old kid says, oh, are you me when I'm older? And the guy's like, yeah. He says, do we live in our own house? He's like, yeah. He's like, oh my God, we have our own house. He says, do we cook? He's like, yeah, I can make I don't know, cheese macaroni. We can make cheese macaroni. I mean, he brought it down to such a level of wowness that your 12-year-old version of you would have with your current life. And Eric, you drive a Porsche. I mean, what? Like that kid in Springs, whoever thought he would have a beautiful wife with a Porsche speaking around the world? I mean, that's just it's an unbelievable expression from that little kid. And, I've watched that guy's TikToks over and over, and he has different scenarios that he plays out of how proud his 12-year-old version of him was of who he is right now.
Yeah.
And so, and then the last piece, what's his name? Hughes. He's a great teacher. Chris Hughes. Anyway, he was talking about the fact that people were asking him, what do you think about people with neck tattoos? And he said, all tattoos have one message. I'm not enough. And I thought, oh my God, it's exactly. I mean, look, I got tattoos. And I was like, wow. A lot of it is like, I need to add something to my life to be like something better. And he was like, no, it means you're not enough. You need more approval. So yeah, I think we're all on the same mission right now, on the same sort of reality creation.
But it's interesting. So David White, the poet who I follow, he laughs about the moment when he's about to go on stage, because oftentimes people just say, oh, David, just be yourself. And he's like, be yourself. Like, that is the hardest thing you could ever possibly ask anyone to be.
Yeah.
And people throw it out like it's like willy-nilly, like, oh, go ahead and be yourself. It's like, it's taken me 54 years to have a more accurate idea of myself. But just to pick up on one thing you said, John, around not appreciating where we're at. I have a view at the moment that the way large swaths of humanity are living right now is very dulling. It's dulling to the best of us, and I recognize that dulling is a hard word. It's like I don't want it to land too heavily with your listeners, but I also want to be upfront about what I mean. But dulling takes away the things that would allow hypothetical Eric to go, oh my God, Eric, look at you, bro. You've put a great life together. Because what the dulling brings is the performative stuff, the not enough stuff, the striving stuff. And there's this whole societal programming that I think 98% of people have locked into. And I definitely am one of those. I'm trying not to be. I'm trying to extricate myself through like a life redesign. But this dulling thing, it takes away from what is so naturally there. And I really think we as a society need to work super hard to get out of that matrix, because it is almost inescapable unless you've got a proper escape plan, And I'm talking practical things like, unless you've got a cabin in the woods where there's some way for you to get away from all of this busyness, that's going to be a problem. Unless you are doing some kind of devotional meditative practice frequently to stop the hamster wheel, unless you are watching pretty carefully what you put in your body, unless you like catching yourself on these stupid decisions we make, like I've just made this. My son's going to go to Bishop's. He's started at Bishop's now. Now I'm tied in for 5 years at monstrously high school fees. Like, did I really think that through? Because it's not like the southern suburbs in Cape Town aren't full of good schools.
Schools,
but I've now chosen one that is going to have me hopping for 5 years. Like, at what cost to me? And I didn't even contemplate not sending him there.
Might need to go back to consulting.
Thanks, bro. I would have hoped for a little bit more empathy there.
Look, looks like you're going back to the mechanic shop, Rowan. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. School fees.
Thanks, guys. It's been great seeing you both again.
Yeah. I saw a bar in Bali called My Retirement Fund. The bar was called My Retirement Fund. It's almost like you have to start a bar, My Kids' School Fees Fund. Come join us so we can fund my kids. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So like, would you say the dulling is mostly just us being hooked into socials, like and what that creates in our brains? Like, where else are you seeing that come from? Because
no, it's way more pervasive than that, Eric. It is the hours we work, it's the time we spend in traffic, it's the debt we under, it's the unfulfilling primary relationships that we allow to become unfulfilling over time because we don't really work into them and maximize them and get through the hard stuff. It's the flights, it's the hotel rooms, this is the life I lead. I'm not pointing fingers. Like, this is me that I'm describing. But what happens there is like this armor gets put on us. And with that armor goes our imagination, our creativity, our spark, our vitality, our willingness to fight against causes that we think need to be fought against. Like, we just get like shrunken, dulled, whatever the word is. And it's really hard to escape. I'm doing the dismantling now. This house that you're seeing behind me, I'm in my last 3 weeks here. I sold it. 6 bedrooms,
congratulations.
don't need it.
It's for school fees. We know that now. But so you...
True. No, but like, and my car's next.
Yeah.
A lot of possessions are going to go out in this move.
Wow.
The meeting times that I'm giving clients are shortening. The days that I'm working are shortening, and it's not easy, right? Because all of these have big implications: financial, friendships, family. But what I'm doing is like I decided 3 years ago to call my parents every day. They live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I've been about 98% good on the everyday call. But it's because I'm starting to have time to do things that are undulled. I just, these calls, they're 5 or 10 minutes long. They're nothing spectacular. But the difference it's made to my parents has been incredible in their final years. And so these are the things that I want more of. And the travel and the airports are the things that I want less of. And now the dismantling starts. And so
Rowan,
who knows where it'll go?
I want to ask you about the catalyst for this, because from what it sounds like, and what listeners might also hear, is that you have been fortunate enough to build a very successful life that grants you the ability to, or the privilege to, like, go through an undulling process, because
Like the
you get to
agency.
choose, right? Because you've made it. And like you said earlier to us that you didn't like consulting less, and you are very intentionally redesigning your life. And I think it's easy to do that if it comes from a place of I've made it, versus I'm still like in the reactiveness of life. But I just want to know, like, what was the catalyst for you? Which was it? Is it? Am I reading it correctly, or am I wrong?
No, you're right. But I think the made it part of my life is the least attractive part of my life. So I'm not setting that up as like I've arrived. I think I'm only in the position to arrive now that I've put the stuff of achievement behind me, or at least right sized it. I think my ambitions were quite immature. They were driven by needing to please people as opposed to just doing what I think is important. So my arriving, Eric, I don't necessarily see as a golden tinged thing. But the moment that this came up for me was in San Francisco over Christmas, early morning journaling, and I wrote the following. I said, I've been waking up scared every day of my life. And
That's so funny you say that. I've got a friend who's a billionaire, and I asked him what his relationship like is with money. He says, I wake up poor every morning.
Yeah. So
he's a billionaire.
Yeah. I mean, and basically, Eric, it was such a shocking moment that I've been scared for 54 or 52 years daily, and masking it and covering it. And I just was like, there is no way my life, my one lap around the sun, which is how I see life, other people might differ, is going to be spent scared. And that was the catalyst.
This dulling of life, and I think the dulling of life, Eric, I think was a really good question, but I think it's what we value that dulls our life. And the world we come from has got us to value things that don't actually give us energy back. And I watched this guy. He said, what is it like to be a man in 2026? These are the things you need to be. Firstly, you better be over 6 foot. So both of you are fine. I'm not. Make sure that you are lean and healthy. Make sure you have money. Make sure that you're going to gym. Make sure your career path is on the go. Make sure your friendships are on the go. Make sure you're providing for your loved ones. Make sure that you're on the new peptide protocol. Make sure that you got your holiday book. Make sure. And he went on for 6 minutes. Make sure. And every single one that he brought up, I'm doing. I was like, oh, I've done that one. Yes, 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 I've done that one. And everything is just stacked on top of each other. That's the dulling. It's almost like my mom has a great line. She says, it's not hers, but she says, I think it's from Rumi. She says, we are a light that has had shades put on top of it. And now what you have is you have these layers of shading, and the light itself is dull. It's dull. You can't even see it. And as Rowan was saying earlier, going back to that original light, that's taking all the shades off, all the lampshades off and off and off and off until you have the light left, So yeah, it's
the interesting thing for me is I live in Hout Bay, Cape Town, for any of your viewers or listeners, and there's a place where casual workers go and sit to get picked up for the day, just doing some building or gardening or whatever. And look, I'm projecting a little bit, but I don't think these people have very much. Yet I drive past them, bantering, smiling, laughing, and I think to myself, interesting. Who's more evolved here?
Well, let me tell you, I did a walking tour of Langa. Have you ever done a walking tour of Langa?
Yeah, or not
Langa is one of the townships here. And it was a Friday afternoon payday. and the township was alive. Every single person's door was open. People were running in and out of people's houses, and kids were running after each other. And our tour guide said to us, he says, "You see all the doors open?" He says, "People think townships are dangerous, but in this township, everybody knows who the thief is. Everybody knows everybody. And so what happens is you live in each other's spaces. Your homes are so small that you are forced to come out and live with the community. And what we've done in our Western world is created such comfortable homes we never have to leave. And so we miss out on the community. We miss out on that symbiosis that happens, And that's one thing that's really been amazing about Dubai, because obviously Dubai lives in the Western world, but this war has brought a lot of community together, and a lot of people are looking after each other, and it's brought about something very unexpected. And so there's a lacking of community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've been doing so all of what we're talking about is sort of in the general territory of like fathoming life, And I read 3 unbelievable books last year, like they're not linked, but they were linked for me in sort of a trifecta. And I just want to share them with you guys and maybe other people, because they were a killer combo. The first book I read was The Untethered Soul.
Yes, of course.
The Untethered Soul, cracker book. Second, Michael Singer. Second book was Falling Upward, Richard Rohr. And then the third book was 4,000 Weeks. And 4,000 Weeks is what we have as. So I read this book.
Oliver Burkeman.
Yeah. And I'm gonna embarrass myself here, because I read 4,000 Weeks, and I'm like, okay, this book is about how to make the most of your 4,000 weeks. The book was about stop trying to make the most of your 4,000 weeks and make time and energy, you idiot. And I was like, oh, that was so humbling, But these books all came together for me in one thought, all 3 books, which is you can live a life from a place of cognition, like your head, and Michael Singer calls it your maniac roommate that you're trying to live with.
Yes. Yeah.
Or you can live from soul. And I think this is the big, clever insight. I don't want to call it a hack because it's too sacred to be called a hack. But what I've discovered is if I live my life from soul, it gets really easy. If I live my life from head, it gets really messy. And so every time on any decision, any choice, I'm just trying to be like, live from soul, choose from soul, act from soul, decide from soul. And somehow it feels like there's a big cortisol suck that just gets sucked out of me in that moment. And that's what soul does for me. And people think soul is like some ethereal thing. It's not. It's actually real. It's a tool. You can live with it. You can be with your own soul. And that's the one that was my win from last year. Is like,
but I think
soul came into my world.
Like can you make it more practical for people? Because I think, sometimes, like if I say to you, go to the gym and do an exercise session, like you'll go there and you'll walk around and you'll look at this thing and you'll like tug on it, and then you'll like go over to this machine, like you wonder what it really does, and then you'll go over here and you'll lift a weight or 2. But if I say to you, like, go to the gym and do 5 sets of bench press, leg press, squats, at least you have some like a clear idea of what to do. I think if you say something like live from soul, it's almost meaningless until you are living from soul. You know what I mean? Like if you are on the inside and you'd say that to me, like John was always like, it has to be from your heart. Like I didn't really understand that until I tapped into it through meditation and psychedelics and like all these kinds of things. So I think if you say something like live from soul, it for you, it's a very clear filter of what that means. But I don't know if other people know what to do with that information.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric. And I'm actually going to like disagree with you a little bit too, because I don't think soul is something that must be understood, defined, pinned down, and dissected. I think the journey to understanding soul is the journey. Like you actually have to kind of make it. you've got to go and grab a book, and you've got to maybe type into the interwebs or some AI agent like, hey, what's your version of soul? Because that's the road I went down. Like, there's no one who's really scientific. In fact, no one at all has defined scientifically what soul is. And I think that's the point. Is like, all I'm saying is like, you got two modes, people. You can live a very messy mode, or you can live a mode that's clear as a bell. If you want the clear as a bell mode, you're going to have to go and fetch it. And so,
Look,
yeah.
I think that there is a way to describe it easier, because I've gone through the same practice myself. There's a great quote, firstly, that says, a clever person has to solve a problem, a wise person avoids it. And that's exactly this process. Is a clever is cognition, wisdom is from the heart. And it's really about finding the process to stay in a state of flow and good mood towards everything. And when you start to do that, the compound effect of that is the synchronicities, is the state of flow. And this is really living from the flow. And it's almost like Tao Te Ching says. Tao Te Ching says, you live a life based on the Tao, on the way of the life, on the way of life. And it's a total surrender to it. And so I think the practice, if anybody's wondering about it, is less trigger points, healing those trigger points, taking responsibility for the way you perceive the world, and releasing into whatever's coming. So, for example, moving to Cape Town for me, away from Dubai, I had to get to a point of saying, release the fact that all the plans I had, my bathroom in Dubai is wall to wall dried fruits, because I'm starting a dried fruit business. I've got hundreds of dollars of dried fruits sitting in my bathroom in Dubai. Oh, well, this is soul living. Okay, the timing wasn't right. The next thing will come, and then I'll apply that, So I think that's a practice that
Any
I've been
specific
following.
reason why it's in your bathroom, not in your kitchen?
Well, my kitchen's small. Yeah, no, and dried fruit. Well, Rowan, let me tell you, dried fruit. Firstly, in the age of AI, I think food and hospitality are going to boom, because food and hospitality aren't really interchangeable with AI. The second thing is we live in a country in South Africa which has got one of the highest R&D labs of any food brand in the world, called Woolworths. And because I've traveled so much, I've realized that Woolworths quality food is untouchable globally. Untouchable. Whole Foods, Erewhon, all of them have been. And so what we've decided to do is start with the dried fruits and repackage them from Woolworths and move them over internationally. So yes, side caveat story. I'm exploring other opportunities.
Amazing.
But now it's sitting there in my bathroom, bro. And my bathroom, it's because it's my guest loo, and nobody uses it. But anyway, wall to wall dried fruits. What a disaster.
I think it's really good for listeners. I think it's really good for listeners to know that podcast hosts and guests like ourselves are absolutely as much on the bozo bus as anyone else out there. To the point of having dried fruit stacked up in a bathroom that you can't access.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, I want to focus in on Rowan quickly before we run out of time. Is you obviously come from a very successful consulting background called Lockstep. And this is kind of where I met you many, many years ago as well. And you've now decided to take on a new adventure and a new career path. Why don't you tell us about that? Tell us what you're moving into and tell us the focus points on that.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I got a seed of ambition in me from a Pink Floyd song when I was 12 years old, around how miserable work was for people. And I'd had a seed earlier when I was listening to my dad and grandfather speak about business when I was like 5 or 6 years old, who loved it. And so I got these two ideas of like, my dad and grandfather loved their work, and Pink Floyd talks about how bleak people are in Middle England. Like, what's happening there? And so that's where my career was born, And now at age 54, I want my message to be more broadly heard, more broadly understood than what consulting involves. So, I think there is a new version of what work, what business, what career is knocking at our door right now. And I think businesses are starting to understand that actually we aren't running very well. There is way more on the table that we could be, that we could do, how we could show up, that we could accomplish. But the dulling has kept businesses small. And so now I'm calling out the dulling first of all, and I'm promoting undulling, because what undulling gives you is the creativity, the energy, the imagination, the vitality, the trust, the cohesion. And I've put it into a framework that is super simple, and it actually works beautifully well, which is like, if you can imagine a triangle: upstream, midstream, downstream. And most businesses focus on the downstream, which is the profit, the revenue, the return on equity, the growth. The midstream is the strategy, the culture, the processes, all of that stuff. Companies are okayish at that, but it's in the upstream where the trickle down starts, which is the quality of thinking, the quality of leadership, the quality of human energy, the quality of decision making and decision structuring. And if you get the upstream good, it flows into the midstream that strengthens that, and then it flows into the downstream. So I'm calling out the absence of upstream thinking in businesses, essentially. And my payoff line is business liberated, and that's what I'm doing. I really want businesses to be flooded with upstream stuff, because when they do, everything changes. Everyone gets smarter. Everyone's undulls. Everyone gets closer. Everyone kind of gets back to their core form that they came into their life with, which is exactly what I'm trying to do for myself. Get back to the lover, get back to the helper, get back to the healer. Like, those are my archetypes, but it's taken me 52 years. It's taken business 125 years to get back to this point, but that's what I'm punting, and it's going very well so far.
What is your call to action for undulling the upstream? Like, what does that actually look like in practice?
It's so simple. You've just got to get off the roundabout and start communing with each other. Like, in business, whether that's a walk or an expansive meeting that doesn't have an agenda, or starting a meeting off with, hey, beyond what we see of everyone, how's everyone doing today? Like, that's the start. It's so simple, Eric. That's the start of the upstream. And out of that comes like, oh my God, I didn't know that about you. I know more now. I see your vulnerability. I trust you more. Energy up, trust up, alignment up. And all of this stuff, the tricky part about it is that it's all invisible. So you can go and do strategy, and you can produce a strategy, you can produce a culture code. It's all there, right, in the midstream. But what fuels the midstream and the upstream is all invisible. And that's what makes it hard to work with. That's where companies are bumping up against a wall right now, is that they're like, jeepers. I agree with you, Rowan, but what exactly do we do about this upstream thing at a practical level? Your question exactly. And so, yes, there is a navigation. I am a guide for this. There's a navigation that needs to happen, but it isn't that hard. It's about getting back to our most human form. And that is to be vital, to be alive, and to be awake, So it's
and how are you servicing your clients now? And how are you changing the model that you're working with? Give us the practicality of how Rowan is going to be working.
Yeah, it's still mostly consulting. I still probably do 95% of my work is consulting, helping companies through these big transitions, whether they're renewals or rejuvenations or expansions or elevations. But in 2 years' time, I want my consulting to be down to about 50% of what I do. But that's going to take some dismantling. But for now, yeah, I'm doing my thing. But I've now got, writing much more, publishing a book in September, doing more teaching online, doing keynotes, got a podcast being launched. So you can see what I'm doing here, but it takes a while to work through the system. So for now, I'm still Johnny Consultant doing my thing, but fortunately, I love it,
What is the book going to be called? Business
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah, I knew you guys were. Thanks for the double punch there. It's called Transcend, and the byline is a new way of leading a better kind of business.
That is so you. That is 100% you. Since that payoff line should be your middle name, actually. It's exactly on point in what you're doing there.
Well, from the god of payoff lines, I'll take that. Thanks, John.
Hardly, but yeah, thank you. Now with
The god of dried
ChatGPT,
fruit.
all of us are gods. Yeah, God of dried fruit. Yes, that's my new identity. That's my new identity. Eric, you were gonna kick off the podcast with a
No, dude,
question. Do you want to go to that
no,
question?
it's way too late for that question right now. We'd need another hour
Oh,
if I introduce that question. Yeah, yeah. No, it's
what
definitely
was
not
the
a like
question though?
a catalyzing question. The question was going to be, how was your relationship with money?
Oh, wow.
Awful.
So we'll have to save that for, I think, a next, because it's a very expansive question. Like we've spoken about money a lot, and
Yeah.
it's been a top of mind thing for me this week again, as I've been,
I was just gonna say, this is a question for yourself.
bro,
I know what's
bro.
going on
The
for you.
Expansive
It's
podcast
a
is just
question for
coaching.
you.
It's literally just us coaching each other all the time. That's all. That's all the Expansive podcast is.
Yeah, you're right.
Live
Relationship
I
with
coaching.
tell you
money.
what. I'll tell you what, Eric. If I can comment on this quickly, there are some things in life, some topics that reach so far into, so much further into our lives than we realize. Money is one of them, and our relationship with sexuality is the other. And I've
Yeah.
I've been doing some work on the latter recently, just sort of trying to expand my horizons, get a bit healthy on that front, just find out some new things to do, working with some good practitioners in Cape Town. But through that sexual work, I got so much value in so many other places in my life that I never thought I would get. Particularly around
Yeah.
self-esteem.
Yes. Yes.
And the self-esteem shot up everywhere. And Eric, I reckon
Yes.
money is absolutely
Yes.
next to that.
Linked.
Yeah,
Linked. Linked.
Yeah.
for sure,
Linked.
for sure.
Absolutely. Look, the tantra work I did explained that your creativity energy center is sexual, and that creativity energy center is also the way you create money. So when there's
Mm.
judgment on sexuality and there's that pressure, it also affects the way you create. There's no flow, literally and figuratively in
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
process. So, yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
Eric,
I
what's
mean, it's
your
such an
relationship
interesting
like with
topic.
money?
I mean, it's constantly changing. That's probably the best answer I can give
Yeah.
you right now. Constantly
Yeah.
evolving. That's probably a better way to say it. No, I mean, like I said, something that's top of mind for me this week. I've been thinking about it a lot. It's something we've discussed in the pod quite often. And I thought it'd be interesting to get Rowan's take on it. But like I said, maybe we'll save that for a next pod.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah. Are
Yeah,
we
it's a big
winding
one.
up now?
Yeah, it seems like we are
Yeah,
pretty much on
we're
time.
gonna start winding up just now. Yeah.
Can I do? I just was checking because I just wanted to give you guys some affirmation before we go, which was not scheduled, but there are a few things that I want to affirm. Like one is that I think you guys are modeling excellent honesty, particularly amongst males. Um, you know, you're touching on topics that many men don't touch on. I just want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge that you are approaching 300 of something. That is a big body of work that takes some sticking at, and I wanted to
Yeah.
just call that out. And then I also just wanted to affirm like how lovely your dynamic is with each other. And I don't see the fullness of it. I see a taste of it, but it's very magnetic. And I think that's probably the central reason why your podcast has done well is that the energy on this podcast is actually pretty pure. It's like it's light and fun, but it's also got a ton of depth to it, and it's got really good intentions behind it. And every time I've come on here, I have such a laugh, and it's just so joyful for me. And I think you guys create that space. So just before we signed off, I wanted to give you some
Thank you.
explicit
That's
affirmation around what you do.
that's so good to hear. You did that last time as well. I can't remember what you said last time, but thank you so much. Thank you for reflecting that back to us. We do get that comment often, but from somebody who thinks about things deeply, obviously it means more. Also, being a man in the journey of self-discovery, it means a lot. You can get it from certain people, but the depth of where it comes from is, I think, really important. But I also think, thank you for giving me that and both of us, I imagine, the practice to take on to the rest of our lives. And I realized that there's so many other places that I should have complimented, could have complimented, and would be so beneficial to compliment, because it's such a beautiful gesture and so generous. And so thank you so much. That means a lot to both Eric and I. I know it does.
Yeah,
It's good to
definitely.
hear.
My pleasure.
And we can affirm you back for being the only podcast guest to have come back 3 times, and now you'll be scheduled for coming back for a 4th time, so we can talk about money and sex.
Yeah, and you know, the egotistical part of me, which I'm trying to kick to the corner, definitely wants the 4th to put a little distance between me and anyone else who's on.
Well, look, I think it took us so long to schedule this. I think what we should do is start scheduling the next one now, so that we can get it into the calendar over the next 2-3 months. So I think that should be a good practice we should do.
I think there's something that we can do as the 3 of us to open up some conversations that men don't have. That's a gut feel.
You mean like a live event?
I don't know. I think we can do it here. I just think there is. I think the world is looking for men to model a different kind of maleness in the world. And I think there's plenty of people who are at the fringes and doing their work, but I don't think it's getting the airplay that it needs. And I just think there's a place for men who've done some work, not all of it, and we're not the finished article yet. But I think there's an encouragement that is needed to get a critical mass here. Our work makes us do this stuff. Most people's work doesn't make them do this stuff.
You're right.
And I think that bridge, I think we can pull people across that bridge.
Yeah,
Look,
I
think
I
I'm
agree
gonna.
with you. Did you guys see the Manosphere? Sorry, just a quick.
Yeah.
Have you seen the documentary?
Sickening.
Hectic. So I agree with you.
I avoided it.
Just that, if you just use that as the counterpoint, then I think there's a big need for it.
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to speak to Mark Sham. He's been chatting to me about having events at his tryst here. So I think we could have something live as well. Besides doing something on here, I think it'll be nice to do something live just to talk about it, and just to have Q&A with an audience of just men. Maybe we should do an event with just men and have just let's just talk about it. Let's have open-hearted discussions about what it's like to be a man. And we don't really know ourselves. We're having a discussion with you about it. We're not coming here to preach anything.
That's for sure.
I'll set it up with Mark.
All right.
Okay.
Ro, thanks so much for coming on the pod again. Insightful as always. John, thanks for co-piloting as always. I think when I reflecting on the conversation for today, something that's been on my mind is that we are always in the process of reinvention. The question is, are you reinventing from a space of weakness or strength? Because at certain times in your life, you might need to reinvent from one or the other. And I think that there might be a slightly different playbook for each, but I think that from today's conversation, it's clear that it has to start with a clarity or an unraveling, a dismantling, a coming back to who you are, a coming back to heart, to soul, whatever that might look like, and not just to be guided by reason and logic alone. And so I think that's the call to action for people leaving this pod today, is that transformation isn't just thinking your way into new, it is feeling your way into the new. So thank you for that. Thank you for the language of dulling and undulling, and for people to be more intentional with how they also shape and design their own lives. It's been great having you on. And for all the listeners, you know where to find us, and we'll be back again next week. As always, be expansive.
I just want to say one thing. Rowan, is your website ready for your keynotes for people to look you up?
Ready and waiting. www.lockstep.global.
Okay, so lockstep.global. You're not doing it under your name?
Nope.
Okay. Have you got your name's domain booked?
I have. I just don't use it. It was too confusing.
I think you should use it as a shadow website for SEO purposes and discoverability, but we can talk about that offline. But anybody looking for a keynote from Rowan, please go to lockstep.global. No doubt he'll add a lot of value to your event. And that's only if you've booked me 6 times, Eric twice, and then Rowan. Otherwise, keep booking me, keep booking Eric, keep checking.
I'm not coming on again. That's it. It's over.
Thanks so much for following. Thanks so much.